Thank you everyone for coming tonight. My name is Nevin Bakonjic. I'm the founder of StartUP Sault Ste. Marie. We're a volunteer-led nonprofit organization that exists to help entrepreneurs in our community. We have a mission to connect local entrepreneurs with the tools, community, and support they need to be successful. I want to welcome you here tonight. Before I forget, there's food and coffee in the corner if you want to grab that at any time. I'm really excited to welcome our special guest here tonight. I met Jason about a decade ago, I think at a similar event where he was talking about his story, his journey at the time, and I know he's had a lot of success since then, so I think he has a lot of great things to share with us tonight. Before we get started and I welcome Jason to the stage, I just want to thank our sponsors, Northern Credit Union, for partnering with StartUP Sault Ste. Marie to bring these events to the community. And now I'd like to welcome Jason Katzenback. He's the co-founder and former CEO of Amazing.com. And welcome to the stage, Jason.
Yeah! Thanks, buddy. Thanks, everyone. So when Nevin asked me to speak, it was one of the things I always like to know is the audience. Who am I going to be speaking to? Because I want to have a purpose, a mission. And so he just said, I don't know, people that want to be here. So I'm going to take it onto my own and ask a couple questions. So first of all, who here owns a business? Doesn't matter if it's profitable or not, just owns a business. Oh, okay. Who here owns a business that they make a living off of? Cool, okay. Who here is just starting a business and doesn't really have traction yet? Excellent. Okay, no, that's perfect. You guys are the perfect audience then. That's great. Okay, so the purpose I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to talk about my journey, but I have to throw in lessons because I learned so many lessons in my life. That's one of the things I'm obsessed with over the last couple of years, especially since I've been able to have time to do this, is really evaluating why I've done things. And me and my lovely wife, Charlene, anyway, I won't get into that. I'll get into that in a minute. But I ask her often, like, why do you think you do that? It's very interesting to have this ability to do that now and to be able to now share with you a lot of the things that I've been thinking over the last couple of years. So my mantra right now that I've had probably for the last decade, it's close to anyway, is today, do the things that you're afraid of so that tomorrow you can do the things others only dream of. Now, the thing to listen about that is today, that means now, action. Today, do those things you're afraid of so tomorrow you can do the things others only dream of. And I'll tell you what, when you're able to do those things and have people I remember driving my brand new Porsche 911 Turbo. I'm not bragging, but I am bragging. I had the ability to do that because I was able to earn enough revenue through my business to do that. And I seen a guy who's a cop, Kevin Fallinger, haven't seen him in years, and he looks at me, he's like, did you win the lottery or something? Like right away. And it was like my time to say, no, my business is doing really well. So I felt really good. So there was an achievement there and it felt really, really good to do that. And those are the examples. I dreamt of owning a 911 Turbo since I was 16 years old. Going through college, all those years, I always dreamt. People ask me about Porsche. I don't know anything about Porsche. All I knew is I wanted a 911 Turbo. That was something that was just ingrained in my head. And when I achieved that in my life, it was such a satisfaction. It was the most amazing feeling, being able to I can't believe I'm in a 911. This is my car and I've achieved it. So really understand, now it doesn't have to be financial things, and sometimes you feel a little maybe selfish at times when you bring up monetary things like that instead of trying to help people or altruistic things. But the reality is we all have those inner needs, those inner desires that really drive us. And that's a key point tonight, is really identifying why you're doing things. There's another quote that I want to talk about, and these two quotes are going to kind of emanate throughout the whole conversation. This one's from Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey talked about, he has a great inspirational story. And his father was an accountant. His father wanted to be a comedian, but he wanted to be a safe job father. He wanted to be able to provide for his kids. Well, he got laid off, and they ended up having huge financial issues. And Jim Carrey learned at an early age, you can fail at the things you don't like, so why not do the things you love? And that was huge for me. Isn't that so true? So often we're sitting there, I need a safe job. I need to just do something that's gonna make sure that everything's gonna be safe. but you're miserable and you're forcing yourself through it and you're fighting for what, a pension? You know, I looked at it when I was 25 and people said, oh yeah, plan so when you're 65 you can retire. I'm like, that's 40 years. I want to have fun now. So that was always in my head. So now, with entrepreneurs, because StartUP Sault Ste. Marie, I'm assuming, is about entrepreneurship. Everything's there entrepreneurial. And so with entrepreneurship, one of the things that I really try to help people with is overcoming their fears, because I have a lot of them. People don't realize that, but it's because you have to face those fears. We all have fears. It's about facing them. And the biggest fear that entrepreneurs have is failure. And failure of whatever it is. A lot of it is pride. How am I going to look? I'm going to be so embarrassed. A lot of it is safety. I mean, if you have family right now and all of a sudden you can't afford to pay your family, like feed your family, that's terrifying. But we start making up these fake things. We start making up things that are just fake. Like, it's not going to happen. What's going to happen if I get sued one day because someone doesn't like a baby swallows a piece? And it's like, that's ridiculous. You have to stop for a second. Now, there's two things that happens with this fear. Is it manifests itself two ways. They do nothing. And so they'll just sit there, overanalyze, sit there and be scared to make a move. And usually that's actually everything that is. They do nothing because of analysis paralysis. Or the other thing they do is the wrong thing. And so I'm not going to mention a name, but there's a person in this room that I'm going to use as an example tonight. So they've got this awesome product idea, no idea if anyone's going to buy it, but they want to spend thousands of dollars getting patents, legal things, and all these things to protect it before you even know if the product's going to work. I'm not even going to keep eye contact with that person just so that nobody knows. Yeah, it's all over now. Okay. So, and what's so funny about that is that's fear. You have to be able to take action and execute. So the reality is a lot of businesses fail. So I had to learn that. I was lucky. My mom was a hairdresser, and my stepfather, he actually was a real estate guy. He did commercial real estate. So unbeknownst to me, I had like an entrepreneurship like in my life. It was like no one had a stable job. It was always about doing your own thing. So I was able, you're distracting me, Nevin. So I was able to really, I realized that early on in life, that's why I wasn't so afraid to step out on my own and do that, because it was a little bit more normal for me. So with entrepreneurship, you'll hear people say like, oh, I don't want to fail as an entrepreneur. But I think people often associate failing as an entrepreneurship with failing as a business. So an entrepreneur can't fail if an entrepreneur starts a business. Let me back up for a sec. See, this is hard when I don't have a perfect agenda, so I apologize. And I have so much going on in my head. So if you're an entrepreneur, the definition of an entrepreneur is you have a higher financial investment in the business. There's more risk that you put on. I think that's a horrible definition because there's a lot more than that. But with that, there's two different things that, sorry, I got to look at my notes. Again, I'm getting myself sidetracked. Yes. The reality is a lot of businesses fail. And you look at Google. Google has Google Glass, Google Hangouts, Google, all these different that flopped. Google didn't fail. Those business models fail. So just like an entrepreneur can't fail if an entrepreneur is being an entrepreneur. So I'm trying to encourage you that if you're trying to start a business, being a successful entrepreneur doesn't mean your first business is going to be a success. It means that your job is to create a business and take action. It's so important. And I know that it's probably confusing. And I told my wife, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm overanalyzing this conversation. She's like, just be yourself and talk about your past. And I'm like, I got to teach a lesson. So I'm going to have a lesson for you. So here's some interesting facts. Who here thinks, show of hands, what's more likely in today's world, do you think, of a startup business, a 25-year-old or a 50-year-old? Who's going to be more successful? The 25-year-old, show of hands. The 50-year-old. Interesting. You're absolutely right. So did you know that a 50-year-old entrepreneur is 2.8 times more likely to succeed than a 25-year-old? The reason I tell you this is I just turned 50, so it gives me a lot of I feel good. 70% of ventures established by 50 plus entrepreneurs are still in operation compared to only 28% of those under 30. The reason? So first of all, isn't that interesting? We think so much like Facebook, all this kind of things like, oh, it's the young people. Young people have amazing ideas, but there's 5 reasons. First of all, they're clear on their why. The older you get, you have life experience. When you're 25 years old, you don't know why you're doing things, usually. But as you get older, you have these experiences. Now, what's interesting, is anyone here like under 30? Yeah. Okay, cool. So I want to speak directly to you. Well, there's someone else that young looking, yes. So the reason this is so important to you is I don't want you being afraid that, oh my God, they have 3 times more chance of being successful than I do. That's not what it is. It's that there's these 5 reasons that I truly believe in my heart. I'm gonna speak to you more, sorry. I'm gonna speak to you because you just look like I'm speaking to you. There's 5 reasons that I truly believe, all of us right now, that these are the reasons that can help people succeed. So the number 1 is being clear on your why. Knowing your reason. If you're not passionate about what you're doing, you're gonna hate it. It's gonna be miserable, and I'm gonna talk about that because I haven't even started on my speech yet. I'm giving you kind of a warm-up. So you gotta be clear on your why, and people say, that's so hard to know. You gotta figure it out because it's gonna help you so much. Execution. Younger people know a lot about ideas and all these things, but they don't really know how to execute on things. I mean, everyone here 40 and over, raise your hands. No, you don't have to. That was so stupid of me to ask. Because I know there's not a lady here older than 29. I know that. So I'm going to change that question. Who here that has been in the working world for 20 years knows how to do to-do lists and time management and has pretty good experience with how to run their day? Like, do you feel exactly? You get, like when you first start out in life, it's like to-do, you're trying to figure out how you work, but as you get older, you figure it out and you figure out how to execute on things. Connections, networking. So first of all, you're doing the right thing, buddy. You're doing the right thing. Networking, connections. The more people you know, that's one of the things my buddy John Barbin here, he's one of the best. Steve Dufour, another guy. Amazing connectors, networkers, the kind of people that they just talk to people, meet people, aren't afraid to talk. That rewards you. All of a sudden, here you are after 15 years of talking to people. Wait, I know a guy. Steve always tells me, hey, do you need a hand with anything? I know a guy all the time. It's super powerful. Confidence. Experience breeds confidence. It's hard when you're young. Courage, you need a lot of it. You're going to have courage because you're going to have to learn something. You're going to have to get competent at something. But then once you get competent at that, you get the confidence. But you can't have confidence when you don't know what you're doing. So as a young person, get training, find mentors, come to things like this where you're listening to people talk, understand what it is that you need to know. And the last thing is resources. Older people usually have capital. I have assets and capital that I can carry on, so it helps me a lot more now than when I was 25. But I thought that was very interesting because these things that I'm talking about, those quotes and these 5 points, really carry through my whole life history that I'm about to give you right now. So I hope, as much as I kind of fumbled that initially, which I hope you excuse me for, I promise to bedazzle you the rest of the night, okay? All right. So Nevin asked me to talk about my journey, and so I feel for myself that my journey started really when I was about 25. So I was adopted, and I grew up in a home that was very loving. I didn't really have a father that did much with me, but I had lots of love for my aunts and uncles. But because I was adopted, there was always little snippets of that in my life told. I had people come up to me and say, oh, so that's not your real mom. And that always dug, that always cut, that always felt like, what? And so early on, actually, one of my best buddies from childhood, Mike Lesnick, I remember one time being in front of his house with him, looking at his house, and saying, I'd be so happy to just have a house like that. And he's like, not me, man. I want a mansion. He's talking about like he wanted I just wanted a family. I wanted something for me because I went all these years starting out, it was all about me wanting to belong. So I realized that what I did back then is I knew I needed to get a job, I needed to get a wife, and that would make me happy. It caused me to marry at a very young age, but it didn't matter because that's something about understanding who you are, what drives you. We can lie and try to fight those impulses, but at the end of the day, when you understand your why, which at that age was my why I'm doing things, when you're clear on that, it helps you because then you start putting things off to the side where that's not going to help me accomplish that. So at a young age, I knew I wanted that family. So then by 2005 comes, I got married, 2006 I got married, sorry, and then 2007, I had my daughter Gail, and I was going to be happy. I had this job. Well, then all of a sudden life started happening. And I was working for this company up in Wall, Ontario called Warehouser. And what my role was I was on the production line for the paint booth area. And so these big bundles of wood would come down the line and they'd go into this paint booth and they'd get covered with edge seal. And then I'd have to strap them and everything. And it was decent money. I mean, back in 2005, 6, making like $50,000 a year. So I was really happy. Like at that time, I thought I was doing pretty good. And then a few months you got into it, like it kind of starts sinking in. And then every week on a Thursday, they have what's called the down day. And on that day, it was the people who worked in that area's responsibility to clean the machinery. So I'm going to try to narrate this. So I'm sitting there in this paint booth, which is about an 8x10 box, steel box. And I have these rubber boots on. And the paint is, like when you have a coffee that's too full and it's just bubbling over, and if you just tap it, it'll drip off. Like that's what's happening with the paint outside my boots. It's just dripping down my face. And I remember just sitting there and it's like, is this what I'm going to do the rest of my life? Is this what I'm going to do? And it just hit me. And I was the ultimate miserable state. But then all of a sudden it hit me at that moment. And I've used this it's called the paint booth story for me because it was such a profound moment in my life where I realized I'm in control. It's my choice right now what I do with what I am in. So I'm in this situation, so what do I have to do? What do I want to do? It's like, well, I don't want to be in the paint booth, so what options? I can go into management, I can go into maintenance, or I can start my own business. So I did all three. I tried starting a business back then in 2007. Back it was called the National Independent Yellow Pages things. We tried doing this online thing. It didn't work regardless, and I almost got a divorce out of it. I applied for maintenance because I thought like, well, those guys never have to get dirty. They send us in to get that stuff and they just sit there and tell us what to do. Or I'd try management. Well, out of that, I got the management job. So it's like, that's why I became a manager. But one of the things I realized when I wanted to do that was, what is it? So here I am right now in this paint booth. I hate what I have to do. This is where I want to do. How do I get from here to there? So when I applied for all that stuff, one of the things I realized is I got to learn how to do interviews. So I went to a psychiatrist here in Sault Ste. Marie, actually, Dr. Blunt, I think. I can't remember his name right off the top of my head anyway. And I asked him, I'm like, you're a psychologist. You know how to talk to people. How do I do interviews? And he taught me I'll give you some tips right now for anyone who wants to do an interview. Mimic the person who's interviewing you. So if someone's interviewing you and if they're on the table like this, leaning forward, lean on the table and look at them straight in the eye. If they're back casual like this talking to you, lean back casual. Do that with them. And it was just little things like that where I felt like a superstar in those interviews. People were like, oh, that guy does such a good interview, man. I didn't know you had it in you. Like, it was just, well, I just took some training. I got some knowledge. It gave me confidence because I became competent. So at that point, I ended up getting the job to be a manager. I was 27 years old, now becoming a manager of 40-year-old millwrights and just union guys. And it was a real eye-opener. But what I realized is, okay, stepping stones, this hurts, but I want to get to the next step. And so I thought I was really happy. Things were working good. But then all of a sudden, it's like, well, I don't like night shifts. Night shifts are kind of hard. And so I started thinking, it's like, okay, well, what's my next step? Well, one of the things I want to stop there for a second is I mentioned real briefly that I tried starting a business and it almost caused me a divorce. When you're looking to start a business, there's two things you have to be really clear on with yourself. Is this a hobby or is this a business? Because if it's a hobby, relax. Just have fun with it, do things. But if it's a business, you got to work your ass off. There's nothing free with businesses. If you want to be successful in a business, you are the hardest worker in that company all the time. No doubt about it. Now, there gets to be a time when you start to get to focus on other things. But if you're not the hardest worker in your company, what's going to start happening? People are like, well, he doesn't do that. Why do I have to do that? Guaranteed, it happens every time. So if you're going to be a boss, you got to be an example. The worst thing you could do is say, oh, if they're, and they'll judge you. They will. They're like, oh, you guys in your easy job. They don't understand that you're sitting there looking at them thinking, you know what, dude? I can't sleep because right now we're suffering for payroll and you have no fucking clue. Pardon the language. But it's just emotional because I hate it when people do that. I shouldn't have swore. I apologize. But it's a reality. As an entrepreneur, you have so much more in the game. As I worked in Wawa, I realized that, and this was up in Wawa, I wasn't happy in Wawa. And I was realizing it's like, well, I have more money and I'm not, but I'm still like, I have like $20 a week spending money. Like it was still paycheck to paycheck because it was just me making the money. That was it. And I was trying to do everything. And so I realized at that time that, this isn't working out. I really wanted to start a business, but I didn't want to go down that road again. So I thought I got to go up the corporate ladder. If I'm in management, that's where the money is. I got to go up the corporate ladder. So then I applied for a job in Michigan in the same company. And thankfully, my stellar interview skills came through again, and I got that job. And I ended up moving to Michigan. And I learned very quickly, just like a business, there's no different. If you want to succeed, you got to work hard. The problem is when you work for someone else, you got to work really, really hard so they get more profit. When you own the business, you get to work really, really hard so you get more profit. So that was a bigger motivator for me. I just didn't want to work for someone else. So I went back to the idea that I want to start a business. So in 2005, I started making little websites about just odd little things. Like my biggest winners were mypickyeaterrecipes.com, where I taught people how to help their picky eater kids because my kids were picky eaters, and hysterectomyresources.com because my wife at the time went through a hysterectomy and I was going through it. But I used that knowledge, created content, and all of a sudden it really took off and I started making money online. And so then I started having people ask me, like, how are you doing this? And it's like, well, I started doing this. And they're like, would you teach me? And I'm like, okay. So I created a membership. And all of a sudden, and this is no word of a lie, I started this business in March of 2005. In December of 2005, I had to walk into my boss's office because I'm like, I have $250,000 in my account because of all these people that just bought my membership. I have to quit. Because all of a sudden my business just exploded and all of a sudden it was like, I can't believe this. So it was just taking my passion of building these little websites, and then I turned it into a site called portalfeeder.com. So back in 2005, that was what initiated it, is we ended up selling a product for $395 a month. You got access to a community and a software that helped you build websites, and I taught them everything I was doing, and they kept paying month after month. This sparked me to all of a sudden get really interested in software, because now that's essentially what I became, was a software developer. And I started creating tools online to defeat the search engines. It was more about, so I created this huge blog network so that I had all these blogs that could write about content for me and everything. But it was all built mainly for me to be able to get results for my other businesses, but then I could charge other people to get access to them. It was just this beautiful model where I kept creating these software tools, but then something happened. All of a sudden, Google decided, from now on, if anybody's using any tools like this, we're gonna blacklist your site. The reality is, Google didn't really know how my tools were working, but they did something really smart, is they put the fear of your business will be wiped out if you're using these tools. So all of a sudden, I lost all my customers. And this was 2009. So I'm working hard on my business. My marriage is falling apart. True story. Google decides to all of a sudden change everything. And I'm at this crossroads where my business was taking off. And then all of a sudden, boom, life was crashing. Where 2008 hit, the recession. But it wasn't just that. As all of a sudden, my wife left me. Never mind, that was going to be a bad joke. My wife left me, my business was in shambles, and my partners that I was working with was horrible. It was just, they weren't doing anything. I was doing the majority of the work, and they were wanting to make money. They were wanting to make their equal percentage. So I came to another crossroads in my life. And at that time, I realized it's like, okay, I have this business. It's doing pretty good. I was doing about $2 to $3 million a year. Now, first of all, when I say that, I was not netting $2 to $3 million a year. I want to make that very clear. Running businesses is super expensive, especially if you have employees, so hire really well. I'll get back to that. And at the end of the day, I was paycheck to paycheck. I was lucky if I was clearing about, honestly, $10,000 a month, even though my company was making $2 to $3 million a year, because I had so many bad systems in place where there was so much money just being thrown out the window that it wasn't even worth it. And with Google just hammering, it just kept shrinking and shrinking. But it was like this great reset. And all of a sudden, I met my wonderful bride, Charlene, who actually was someone I fell in love with in grade 6. So I was just blessed that she came back into my life. And we were actually sitting there talking, and we were talking about opportunities. And there was a networking group called the Mavericks. So I'm in a real low at this time, other than of meeting her. But with my business, I didn't know what to do. I was just scared. And she said, well, why don't you do this? And I'm like, well, it's expensive. It's like $15,000 a year. She goes, but if you don't do this, you'll never be, you'll miss out on so much stuff. So then we decided, okay, we're going to do it. So we flew down to Miami. We went to this Maverick event, and it was incredible. All of a sudden, you meet all these inspiring people who are just, some of them are doing like, everyone had to be doing at least $1 million a year. But, there were some people that were just crushing it. But they were all just getting together, having fun, getting to know each other. Just kind of like this, networking. It's so important. And through that, I ended up meeting a young guy named Matt Clark at the time, who was 25 years old. And I'm just sitting there in these crossroads, and we were talking, and I'm like, what do you do? He goes, oh, I sell supplements on Amazon. I go, what do you mean? He goes, yeah, I have a supplement company. I said, you're 24 years old. How do you have a supplement company? He goes, oh, I buy the supplements from this company, and they private label change it for me to my own brand. I'm like, you can do that? So I started looking at it, and all of a sudden I realized it's like, oh my goodness, there's this huge opportunity. And at that time, I had created this huge mailing list. So that was the very first thing I did. And that's something I advise anyone who's looking to start a business, is create an asset of your audience. Create an audience. Figure out who your audience is and run ads. You can create, it's best to get emails, but find your audience and start growing it. Because when you get to the point when you have an audience of 100,000, 200,000, 500,000 people, you can print money. Literally, you can print money just by sending emails. Because you figure out what they want, you find the solution, you craft the message to them, and you send it. Email is still really powerful. It's still, in my opinion, more powerful than anything out there, because you can repeatedly hit people with emails, and it works, and it's an asset that's incredible. So that's just one thing I'm a big believer in, is emails. So let me get back to where I was. So I met this guy, Matt. He then showed me, he goes, I'll show you how to do it. So I created this product. It was actually raspberry ketones. It was a diet supplement. Back about 10 years ago, Dr. Oz was really getting popular with selling diet supplements and how people could lose weight. Well, I just so happened at that time, I came out with a raspberry ketone drop. And the only thing I did different than the manufacturer who was selling it to me was I made my label a little bit more natural looking, and I put a little fake raspberry beside it. But it was just like I just cut it out with my computer and popped it in there. But it made it pop from everyone else. Boom! I was like the third best seller. Like, I remember me and my wife were like, "What are we gonna do? We're making $15,000 a day selling these supplements, and it's like we just started. We didn't know. We're telling her mom we're gonna be billionaires. We're thinking, Sadly, that didn't work out that way, but we still made a lot of money. But the supplement industry, as a side note, is horrible. The companies you'd work with, they would even say to you, yeah, it doesn't matter. Every one of them. Every single one of them. It was ridiculous. Like, yes, I'm sure you could dig out, but like, just really be careful when you buy supplements, because that was an eye-opener. But anyway, my business took off. And so all of a sudden, I'm like, this is incredible. So we created this membership site to teach people how to sell on Amazon. And so what we decided is, on selling on Amazon at the time, there was 3 options. You could be a Kindle writer, which are like ebook. Everyone knows what a Kindle is, right? Yeah. Kindle writer, a private label, like a drop shipper. So what that means is you work with a company to sell their products, but it's their brand and everything. So, it's like me selling an iPhone where I get maybe 10% profit. So someone orders from me, then I take the money, I then send it to Apple, and they send them the thing, and I made my 10% that way. So that's kind of what dropshipping is. The problem with that is you're not creating an asset. When you're selling other people's products like that, all you're doing is being a middleman. So if all of a sudden, like, they don't want you to sell the product anymore, and you got nothing because you don't have the customer or anything. And then the other model was to create your own brands. So we tried all three of those the first year. We did really well when we launched it. We did $1 million launch, did really, really well. But what we noticed is that about 5% were making success everywhere else, and all the success was coming from the private label. And actually, Jerry, he was actually, I'll talk about him a little later, actually with Kanban and stuff like that. But he was part of that early. When things started launching, because we had worked earlier together and he had seen it. And it was incredible. All of a sudden we started teaching people this stuff and we were changing lives everywhere. And it was so, like, I didn't expect when I was in my 20s, I'd be speaking on stage, I'd be teaching people, I'd be traveling the world. I had no idea. I don't know if people can plan that much. Like, it just happened. But what I did notice is that it was always because I was following my passion that led me to that. So I think that's an important thing that I'll get back to as well. But with this membership, all of a sudden it took off. And one of the things that really succeeded with it was because I was so involved with the community. I got to really know my members. I made sure that my customers, I knew exactly who they were, what language they were speaking, what they were like, the tools they needed and all this stuff. And I was really busy at that time making tools for them and everything too. And that's so important because when you're trying to sell something to someone, if you don't know who they are, how can you talk to them? You know, people are like, oh, I want to start selling these kind of things, but they don't even use them. Like, would you buy that product? And so it's really hard. So you have to get to know your customers, talk to them. And things were going great. Then what happened is I started to become like a celebrity in the group. And what happened with that was all of a sudden I couldn't run a company anymore. I had to also be the face of the company. And I had a business partner that had totally different ideals and focuses than me. And we were doing really well, but all of a sudden I started reading books and like Google's talking about how you should run a company. Facebook's talking about how you should run a company. And all of a sudden we just decided, you know what? Let's do what Facebook does. That's got to be the solution. This is so overwhelming. So I had this awesome office here in Sault Ste. Marie. I was spending about $2,000 a month on rent. I had about 10 people in that office. Everyone, like, we paid very well, but it wasn't like exorbitant. It was very well. And we thought, you know, it'd be a great idea to close this office, rent one for $90,000 a month, pay $500,000 a month in salaries, and see if they can make stuff that we don't need, but we think we need them because that's what everyone else is doing. Now, that's kind of a joking overview, but in reality, that's what happened. We just decided one day, me and my business partner, it's like, well, here in the Sioux, I mean, why would we keep the business here? Let's go to Austin and be like Facebook. And that literally cost us out of pocket, I would say 10 million bucks, easily, of money just wasted because we never got one single better result in our company. So oftentimes, you know, a big lesson learned for that is Acres of Diamonds. So the book Acres of Diamonds to me is one of the best short reads you can do if you've never read it. And it's such a simple book. And all it talks about, and I can't remember if it's based on a true story or not, but I think it's based on a true story of a guy in South Africa. But at the end of the story is he ended up going searching for diamonds. And he ended up going for so long that he lost his house. He lost every possession he ever had. The guy that bought his house found the biggest diamond mine in South Africa in his backyard. So, and it's just one of those things that so often you're thinking always at the next thing. What's the next thing? What's the next thing we should do? And you never stop to actually look at what do we have right now? What's working and what doesn't work? And so that was something we suffered at that time. We had this fame and it happens. All of a sudden when your business takes off, you're so confident. I was so cocky. I remember I was pissing her off like crazy because there's like, I just say things like, oh yeah, I'm unstoppable, you know, like thinking I can't do anything wrong. It's like, well, the reason that started happening too is because you're paying everyone. And when everyone's getting paid from you, they don't want to piss you off. So they're all telling you stuff that they think you want to hear. And it's horrible. Because I was doing stuff that I shouldn't have been doing. I'm listening to one guy tell me, stop doing that. This is what a company guy should be doing. And because at the time I was 40 and had all this experience before that, I'm thinking, you know, you're so confused. And it's like, it was just horrible. So a big thing to always remember, in my opinion, the big lesson I want to leave with this one here The definition of entrepreneurship is a lie, and acres of diamonds, that when you're running your business, there's going to be a point when you think you need all these grandiose things. And if you haven't stopped to look at what you got and take account of where you are right now and what you can do with that, you're missing a big opportunity. Thank you. The applause. So when you speak, so I paid tons of money to learn how to speak and all this kind of thing. When you speak, you need to take about 3 months to do a speech. If you do any less than that, you're not really preparing well, because there's so much that goes into it. So I feel like for myself, I just want to share this with you. This is freaking hard up here. So just because I've spoken before, don't think like, oh, it's so easy. No, no, no. So when ASM took off, it was like a lottery.
What's ASM?
The Amazing Selling Machine. So I have a company that I sold called Amazing.com. What happened was, actually, I'll tell you that story. So you want to do branding is so important with a company. So I bugged my buddies here, JL Builders, the best builders in town, have a horrible company name. Because if they ever get to a point that they'd want to sell the company, who wants John and Luke Builders? So, but seriously, great builders. Anyway, branding is so important because the perceived value it gives is incredible. Because all of a sudden it just seems like it's not a mom and pop operation. Even though people inherently want a mom and pop operation, they want the professional appearance, but when they get emails, they want that close coddling kind of like, talk to me, show me. His brother did a great job. His brother actually sold, he was selling on Amazon these window shades. And they would send people a follow-up email right away telling them how they're a startup company, they're just a married couple, and people were loving it, and it was ranking really well. It was just, the company didn't work out. Regardless, it was a huge, huge thing. And it just proved to me over and over again how people love that close connection, but they want to see a professional. They don't want to see something that's like, I don't know if that's a scam or not. What's great about today with the internet is you can really do some high quality stuff quite easily. Yes, it was like winning the lottery, sorry. And so all of a sudden you don't know what you're doing, and so you're just scrambling. And so what we started doing that really became a game changer for us was how we focused on our planning. So suddenly we decided, because everything was always just, and I've always self-funded my company. So it was very much, we're just going to do this, and I'm going to, and I get really bullheaded about my ideas, and I just go, go, go. And it's like, this is my belief, and I'm going to do it. But that only took me so far because I didn't plan things out this far. I just was like, my passion was I wanted to be a dad that could stay home. I remember Tim Freeman, very wealthy guy in Gaylord, Michigan. I was living there. This is such a profound moment for me. I remember we were sitting there at the community festival. He reached in his pocket, took out a few $100s and gave one to each of his kids. He's an amazing father, by the way, too. But he had that ability to do that and said, guys, go have fun. I'll see you in about an hour. I'm sitting there with my $20 for my whole family thinking like, I want that. And it wasn't the money. It wasn't the wealth that I wanted. It was that. It was that ability to go with my kids and just say, you know what, here, go enjoy yourself, have some fun. That to me was, and sometimes we don't want to admit that money, that is something that we're after. We always try to find some altruistic thing. You see companies do that a lot today where we're all about this. But if you're not profitable, you can't be of any of that. So as a business owner, you have to be real about that. And finances have to be number one. So what we did at that time is we decided we got to hire good people and we got to get structured about how we run this company. So we ended up hiring coaches. So we got a great coach that started helping us, and we started implementing things in our company. And the biggest thing that we did is called the 90-day year, which is awesome. So what you do is really simple, is you look at the year and you just say, I'll use any example. Let's say I'm going to start a business and I want to have a restaurant downtown that's going to serve hot dogs. So you figure out right now I'm working at the steel plant. I need that restaurant. I want to sell this restaurant. The first step I need to do is figure out where am I right now and how much money is it going to cost? What do I need for those resources in a year from now? So you write down your big goal, 1-year goal, hot dog company. So then what you do is you figure out, okay, now looking back where I am in the next 90 days, what are the 5 biggest things, only 5, Don't like sit there and make 10 things. The 5 biggest things I can do in the next 90 days to get me closer to that goal. Those are your 90-day goal. Then what you do is you go back now and you work in 1 to 2 week increments. And so in those, and I'm gonna actually later, that's why I have this up here, I'm gonna talk about this a little bit more. In those 1 to 2 weeks, what you're doing now is, what can I do in these 2 weeks that'll get me as close as possible to that 90-day goal as possible? And so then now you know, okay, so then it can seem like such a big thing, a hot dog stand. Well, then now you're like, okay, the first thing I need to do is know if I have to register a business and what kind of laws there are. So then you write down, okay, figure out what I have to do from legal perspectives of getting the restaurant. Then you write that down and you focus on it for 2 weeks. And then in 2 weeks, when you get to it, you double check that it's done and you figure out your next tasks. And so we started doing that in our company, working in these 2 week cycle. And it was something that guy right there with glasses tried to teach me 5 years before that. Well, maybe 4 years before that. He kept saying, oh, you got to do Scrum. I think you called it Scrum, or what did you call it? Kanban? Kanban, yeah. And so the whole idea was the to-do items and everything, but you work in sections. You work these 90 days, and then we create a board. Actually, I'm going to do it right now because it was just so good for us. And this is what I even do, me and my wife, in our home right now. I'll just do it real simple. We've got our to-do, in progress, and done. Yeah. And so me and her do this every week. We have a meeting once a week on this, and we have a list. We have, so for example, I'll have, biz that I'm working on. I'll have home. I'll have property. And then what we do inside of these is we create all the to-do lists. We think of like, what's everything we know? And most of them in the beginning is figure out what you need to do. Like, for example, right now I'm working on my property, building all my own stuff, mooching off my good construction buddies. But a lot of it is, I don't know what I'm doing, so I have to figure out. A lot of it is ask John, ask Luke, research this online. But out of those, then you create other tasks. So what you do is you write all those tasks down, then you say, okay, right now this week, out of all these tasks, for me to achieve my goal with this business, what are the ones right now that are the best ones for me to do? So you move them in there and that's it. You only do like 2 or 3 max. Because if you get those done, you can add more. And then that's your goal. You've got those for all of your companies, all of your things, your priorities. And it just gives you sanity. But the thing is, you're working on a 90-day, 2-week kind of window using this. That's how we work it. Does that make sense? Okay. When you speak at events that are about certain topics like Amazon and everything, it's very interesting to see the reactions of people in the crowd and talk to the crowd. And I thought, like, when I started coming here, I'm like, this is going to be interesting. It's going to be so different. It's not. You guys are the exact same. I got some people falling asleep. Some people love it. It's great. Just having fun. So I want to keep focusing on business lessons. So when everything was going really well, it was being focused on the customer first. It was being focused on making sure that what we promised to the customer was what we were doing. That started going away because we started, I don't know what it was. I don't know, again, was it the books or whatever? We started focusing instead of, we got to scale this company. We've got to do this. And so we stepped back, totally lost focus on the customer. So when we were focused on the customer first, to give you an example of how powerful that was, a guy, Ezra Firestone, we promoted a product of his. We did no pre-selling or anything. We simply sent out emails. In 1 week, he sold $3.5 million of his course. We didn't do anything pre-selling. 3 years later, we have now disconnected from our audience totally. We tried selling something very similar. We sold $30,000. So 100 times difference. And what happens with so many people in companies is that as it grows, all of a sudden you stop answering phone calls. You're like, I don't have time for this. This isn't as important. Yeah, it is. It's 100% just important. And I was so relieved you're hiring an assistant. I just want to say that. Because when you're trying to grow a business, if you can't answer phone calls, if you can't answer emails, Your customers know it. And so, yes, there's a point when you have to have people, sometimes like people would get email, they'd come up to me and say, that was such a great email you sent. I'm like, I sent an email, because it was my assistant doing the stuff. And that's the idea. You hire someone so good that no one knows because they want you. And that might sound cheap, but it's reality. Like I couldn't grow my business. I couldn't do more things. I couldn't be more of an inspiration if all I did was be in the community. I'm creating a job then. And I didn't want to create a business to create a job. But sadly, that's actually what happened. Is initially we were so excited, things were going so well, making all this money, I'm getting to do all these things. But all of a sudden, like, there's legal issues coming up, and all of a sudden I have to do HR stuff, and this hiring stuff is hard. Who here is hired? Has done hiring? Who here hates hiring? Who here loves hiring? I'm seeing it. Oh, you do? Oh, wow. Okay. He's my neighbor, so I'm going to love to hear why he loves this. But and maybe this is why, because when you actually understand how to hire, it's a science and it's a process. And you better know exactly what it is you're hiring for. And I do want to give a tip on that about hiring. I'm going to give that in a minute, because if you're going to run a business, if you're running a business, you need to hire. The best thing you can do is hire to free your time. Don't hire because you think like, oh, we need this. It's like, if you're not able to do the things that you can absolutely do best in the company, every other employee is a waste. So fill those bases first. That's helped me. I have one girl, she's off on maternity leave right now. She's been my godsend because she knows me. She understands me. We've worked with each other so much. I could take time off. Last year, I took a full year off. We went traveling. We did all these things. I didn't have to run my business. I have another company. I didn't have to do anything. She did it all. It doesn't mean it did stellar, but I still had someone there that made a difference. It's so important, and it's so hard to find those people. So we're at this point in the business where, things are kind of going wonky, and what we're realizing is, and actually Charlene started noticing, is there was a conflict with me and my partner. So if you go into a partnership, understand that it's a marriage. It's exactly the same from a business perspective, is now you are tied in, and yeah, there's emotion. You guarantee there's emotion, and it's going to run forever because now you're in this business together. You're going to either leave very few people end up breaking partnerships and remain best friends. So that's something to understand. And a lot of times we get into it, we think, oh no, this is going to be so great. We're going to get this and that. But if you don't take the time initially with that partnership to really set some boundaries, it's going to hurt you bad. So just know that. Don't be the guy like, oh, I trust you. We don't need to do these legal things. If you're about to go into business with someone, make it legal. And make sure you're smart with the legal. Because this happened to me where I signed a legal document, went through some trauma, thought I was signing the same document. It was a swap document. So there was actually a clause in there that was removed and changed. And I didn't pay attention to it. My bad. I didn't read the contract. That's what happens is sometimes, we think when we're doing business, it's like, oh, I trust you. I trust you, Mr. CFO. So by the way, a CFO is not a bookkeeper. A CFO is someone that is going to take your money and make you more of it. If they can't do that, then they're not a CFO. Don't hire a bookkeeper if you want a CFO. I just want to make sure everyone understands that one. Because these are lessons. I'm trying to talk about the lessons learned during that time. So me and Matt started really bumping heads, and it was causing these issues. And I wanted to continue with the emotional kind of being attached to my customers. He didn't. Well, what ended up happening is with all this success, we ended up moving to Austin, which was actually a huge psychological mess up for me. Because one of the things, as I talked about earlier, was being adopted. I wanted to be that father in this family that was my family. It was mine. 2015, I moved to Austin because we were going to get this business going. Things were going great. But I had to leave my daughter because she had one more year of school left. So she had to finish her grade 13. And everything in me didn't want to do this, but it's so exciting. I know, and I've been counseled about this and everything. It's like, you can't look at it this way. But I live with this, and it's a lesson learned, so I want to share it. So my core nature is my family first. And so in December of 2015, my daughter got cancer. And so at that point, she was in college, And all of a sudden I realized for the last year, I haven't seen her because I chose my business over her. Now, yeah, that's not kind of what happened, and we talked about it, but the fundamental fact of it is that's what happened. That rocked my world. Well, 9 months later, after chemotherapy and all that stuff, we thought our daughter was fine. I get a phone call, and I get a phone call from my business partner, who was my ex-business partner at that, and he goes, "I need you back." When we had this conversation, I was very happy because of Gail, and it's like, oh, I feel really good now. Like, I was kind of feeling like a loser. Like you go through all these depression things, and to know I was actually doing the right things in the company. So we sat down, had a coffee, and agreed to go back, but I didn't sign a single legal document. So we had set up already a buyout, but we just said, oh, we'll figure things out. Well, as I was back in the company doing the CEO thing, and we got the company back up to over 20 million, and it's doing pretty good. Gail got cancer again, and she ended up passing away in 2018. Then a year later, Charlene got cancer. She got double negative breast cancer, which if you know anything about breast cancer, that's one of the ones that you definitely don't want. And then it was 2020. So all of a sudden, you're sitting here at this crossroads. I'm running a successful business, but I have a job. I'm not really running a business. And I'm supposed to be on camera all the time showing people how successful and happy I am, where I'm friggin' miserable. I'm so depressed. I'm going to counselors. I'm on medication. I was falling apart. And I couldn't understand what it was. I was blaming everything else. So I went to a psychiatrist. And he said, and I wasn't being honest. And that's the thing too, when you need help, why don't we want to be fully honest? Why are we so afraid? You're paying someone, but yet I'm still hiding. I'm like, my pride, like I don't really want to tell you that, it's this. But it's like, how do you get out? And I kept thinking like, oh, because of Gail and because of Charlene and just all these things in my life, that's why I'm depressed. But when I thought of those things, it made me sad. Of course, the idea of losing my wife and losing my daughter, like losing a child is the worst thing can happen to you. But that wasn't making me depressed. My business was. I took a buyout because I wanted out. And it was enough money that we knew it's like, okay, now we're set for life. If we live a certain way, like in a cardboard box and something. I'm very forgiving with people because at your core, I don't know what you've been through in life. I mean, there's so many horrible things that happen to people. And I realize like even I haven't had horrible things happen to me and I'm still weird. So it's like everyone's different. I never mean to harm someone. So I like to think other people don't intentionally do, but we know they do anyway. So now I'm at this position where, and during this time, I want to back up for a sec. It was incredible while I had a meeting. It was just like I interviewed Richard Branson on stage. Like, what an honor. Like to be sitting there looking at this man in his face and seeing the fear in his eyes for me to question him. And I'm like, you're a human. You're just simply a man. And it was like being able to see that, it helps you so much to realize that he's no different than any one of us. It's just he knew how to take action on an idea that he had. He's not what?
He wasn't super social.
No, it was awkward. Like, yeah, it was really awkward. But it was really neat. Like, and so many people, Sarah Blakely, the founder of Uggs, Robert Kiyosaki of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, like we got to go on. So then, here's where I think this gets really interesting, is now I'm at this point in my life where I've had this success and I never dreamt of. And all of a sudden we have this freedom that we never dreamt of. She had a successful cancer treatment. She ended up surgery. All those things went really well. So now all of a sudden we were given this open window of what do you do? And it was interesting because 10 years before that, Mama Charlene was a public health professional here in the Sioux. And she got to quit her job. And I remember because she started working in the company, the first 6 months was hell for her. Because it was trying to figure out what you're doing, trying to fit back in a mold, like trying to fit back in, like when you tell people you can do anything you want, like when Nevin's saying you can talk about all of this, it's like crap. There's so like when you go to a restaurant, who's been to the Cheesecake Warehouse, I think it's called, or Cheesecake Factory? That's an encyclopedia. Like, how do you pick something with that? Like, I want 4 options, man. Just give me a steak or, It's just so much easier because all of those options, it's just horrible. I don't even know why was I talking about that?
Because we now are...
Yes, we have all these options. So when I sold the company, the first thing I had to do is figure out what's my next move. And what I realized is at that time, because when you're running a company, when you're busy, you don't realize this, but you're going, you're just vibrating all the time. And so when you try to take time off, you know, it's hard because, you know, you try to do things, but you got kids and like, you never really get to stop. Like you hear those people like, oh, if you want to really know yourself, take a tent and go out in the forest for a week. And it's like, I don't got time for that. I've got kids, I've got all this stuff. So you can't do that. And at that time, I didn't realize, like I literally was vibrating. So my coach said, for the next month, I want you to do nothing but play. Well, he goes, what's a selfish thing that you like to do? I said, I never do it, but I always like playing video games, the campaign ones. I don't want to do the online stuff, but I always felt like Call of Duty and that, it's like you're in a movie, like it's really fun. I said, I'd like to just do that and not be guilty. He goes, you have to, for the next month, play as many video games as you want. For a month, all I did is every morning I had my coffee, and that was my job. I did Spider-Man, Call of Duty, God of War, and I can't remember the other one. But then by a month later, I realized like I was super relaxed. My mind no longer was on like, what do I got to do? What do I got to plan? I got to do something. I got to accomplish something. And all of a sudden, my head started getting clear. So the next thing I was told to do is to start to play. Play is so very important because now you want to start figuring out what it is in life you like to do. So I tried just a whole bunch of things. And I realized right now, I hate construction. So I want nothing to do with that. I'll just say that. I'm trying to, so kudos to you guys, man. And I'll tell you another thing I'll say, so when it comes to contractors, it was always, I always believed that they were worth it. But until now, I can truly say, like, I had no idea how worth contractors are when you're trying to do stuff on your own. And the fact that, how much, it's just crazy. So, yeah. But it's been amazing. So I've been learning all these things. But at the same time, in the background, I had a company running, and it was selling cheese boards and charcuterie boards online. And so it was doing pretty good. It actually did really well. The first year, actually, what am I talking about? Yeah, the first year that we started doing it, that first Christmas, we did $250,000. And then the next year at Christmas, and because it was a brand new product, it took off. Then all of a sudden we ran out of inventory. I had to wait like 6 months to get in. The next Christmas, we did like 600 grand just in December. Well, then 2000 came around, and all of a sudden, all the supply chain issues started happening. And so now, all of a sudden, we sold out of inventory. We ordered our inventory, gave them our money, but things took 10 months to come in. So if you're trying to sell products, and you have no products on your shelves for 10 months, but you have employees to pay, insurance to pay, all those things, it was horrible. So, all this money that we've made and we're so happy, all of a sudden is now just going into the company. So I started looking at it and thinking well, there's definitely a market here, but I don't want to deal with China. And that's what I was doing, is all my products were sourced from China. I was using bamboo, and they're great products, but the thing is, I can't control quality. I had and for example, I could get a C-can, 20 by 8 C-can here for about $4,000. No, 40 by 8 for about $5,000 full of my product. 9 months later, it was $27,000. So just little things like that, all of a sudden, that's your profit. You can't do that. So I started looking could I make these in Canada? We're always told because of the low labor costs and everything. Well, now there's an equalizer. Because now there's the supply chain issues going on, and all these, with Trump, what he was trying to do with tariffs and all these things coming on. So I started looking at Canada, and all of a sudden I started looking at our sustainable forestry here. And did it ever make me proud? Canada is the #1 sustainably forest country in the world, and we have 0 issues with trees. We are in more control of our forests in Canada than any other country in the world. And the cool thing with trees is a lot of people don't realize, but when you buy what are they called? They're nylon, the cutting boards or the plastic ones. You buy one of those, you're polluting. You're creating something that now is adding to the environment. You create a cutting board out of wood, you now have contained carbon, and that thing will disintegrate or you give it away. Like it grabs carbon from the air. So I started looking at all these benefits of why using wood products is so powerful. So I started making a plan and figuring out, can I actually create a company here in Canada that competes with a Chinese company? So I started looking at technology. And what was really interesting, so one of the things we were talking about this earlier here, when things like right now happen, when 2008 happened, great changes in economies, there's huge opportunities. Everyone looks at them as negative, thinking like, oh no, the housing market, oh no, this, whatever. Look at it from the other opposite side. Well, what is that presenting for opportunities? You know, the housing market, there's huge opportunities there now. They're in so many different ways. Anyway, back to my other business model. So I started looking at this, and all of a sudden I started looking at CNC machines. These things are incredible. You could have this, and they're expensive and they're big, but you can have this CNC machine spitting out nicer than handmade boards all day long for you. And so I started looking at this, so I decided, you know what, I don't know the first thing about this, but I know manufacturing engineering, because that's what I originally went to school for. I know how to manufacture things. So what's the first thing I want to do here? It's like, well, you have to have a story. So if you're making a product, the best you can do is to be a storyteller if you're a marketer, because people want to have a reason to buy your product. Yes, there's a lot of people that just buy products for whatever reason, but most people buy brands because they relate to the story. There's something that they like about it. And those are the brands that people become lifelong fans to. I knew I wanted a story, and so I started looking online at YouTube videos. And like, how are people making charcuterie boards? And then I started seeing things like Outdoor with the Morgans and these things like that. And they're just random videos, but there's people like building their business and stuff, like just talking about like random living their stories. And so I started thinking about like, what if we bought a sawmill and started cutting the trees that made the boards? And then I started figuring out this whole story. So if we're in control of the product from start to finish, the story could be how, and it's a true story, how I had this business and I've traveled the world, it's all true, so I've traveled the world. I love entertaining. We've hosted huge events. Gone all over. We had these amazing experiences in Mallorca, everything in these caves where people would come with us, entrepreneurs would come on these journeys, and we just entertain them and teach them these amazing teaching these amazing skills, but we'd surround them with amazing experiences, because the whole idea we had in our head is, if you can get people to feel experiences that they otherwise would not, and tell them that you can achieve when you achieve success in life, these are the kind of experiences you can have, kind of like double set the standard. And so, we had all these experiences and we love charcuterie. Who doesn't love charcuterie? And so, and then, one of the arguments I always get is, oh, I know guys that create charcuterie boards. Yeah, but they suck at marketing. I'll tell you that much. They suck at marketing. You go to their websites, they're not, anyway. So if there's a charcuterie person in here, I'm sorry. So then I looked at that and I'm like, there's a huge opportunity. So just for example, now I'm going to get lots of competitors, I guess. So Google Trends. So I started research. It's like, okay, charcuterie, type it on Google Trends. Since 2005 to now, huge takeoff. So then I'm like, okay, well, how about bamboo charcuterie? So I started doing all these different searches to see the trends. So then I'm like, so this is legit. So this is like not just a new Amazon thing. Charcuterie is really a booming new market. So then we started talking about the story where it's like we love doing charcuterie, we love traveling the world, we have all these experiences. I had this business, in China, having these products, but I didn't trust it. It started getting crazy out of control. I couldn't handle the excuses. Like there was always excuses where, oh, we're going to be 2 weeks, and oh yeah, the quality's good. Oh, we can't really show you that process. Well, I'm not going to spend $10,000 to fly there to see if they're actually doing what they say. So it was really hard to build a brand on that, but I thought, like, if I actually started building the products, making them and selling them, then I could grow the company here in Canada. So then what we're doing, so I'm telling you a lot here so what we decided is like, well, how can we prove this without, breaking the bank? And so what we decided is like, well, we're buying a new property. Let's build a warehouse, a workshop on that property, and we're gonna build the charcuterie boards there, and we're gonna focus on no employees. So number one, what's the number one thing you hear people griping right now? What's your guys' number one gripe? And like, you can't hire people. It's so hard to hire anyone. So the first thing I figured is like, if that's a bottleneck in the world right now, how do I go for that? I looked for automation. So I bought, like that saw I bought, fully remote control. Everything I'm buying, it's the high-end best stuff because I want it automated. It's much cheaper to spend $20,000 extra on this saw than $50,000 a year on an employee. So I'm putting all of these strategies together like that. And so then we just got this sawmill and I started cutting logs. I started teaching myself because it's that confidence to competence thing. The only way I'm going to learn how to do this is viable is if I can do it myself. So we started cutting logs. So then it was like, well, we can do this now. Now I have to build a kiln. So then I started looking at all this stuff. And one of the things that I was always use my own money. Well, Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, great book if you ever read it. It talks about how to entrepreneurship, but he talks a lot about how to leverage other people's money. You know, the guy that most people in the world hate, Trump, became rich mainly from leveraging the bank's money. You know, one of the great things about real estate is if you own rental properties and you refinance it after 7 years, that's free money. There's no tax paid on that. Yeah, you have to pay it back, but the renters pay it back. So the idea of living in debt can be very profitable. So we started looking at this thinking, you know, we have this money in the bank, but why do we want to spend that? Maybe we can get a loan for this. So then I built a business plan after we already had the saw and everything was going because I was realizing, yeah, I want to do this. I'm liking it. I really like doing this. And so I applied for the Canadian Small Business Loan. I'm super thankful to them, but at the same time, it is so ass backwards. So I wrote the business plan to look like I needed the money on a proven idea. They didn't like that. You have to have money already available to cover these expenses, then we'll loan you the money. It's like, well, what small business can do that? It's like, it's so ridiculous. And not only that, they charge you an extra fee of percentage. So here's how it works. Let me tell you another thing. So you have to pay, if let's say you get approved for $1 million, and the full value of that loan, $1 million, means that every month you have to pay, say, $5,000 if that whole loan is gone. Well, what they make you do is as soon as you get the loan and you put one thing against that loan, you have to start paying the maximum amount. So if I just bought a computer off that for $5,000, well, your first month you pay $5,000, boom, it's back. What's really cool about it is they want to get you to execute because like if you're going to take this money and not do anything with it, you can't have it. But it's just very hard because it's like it puts people that don't have the financial resources, like, what do you do? And you have to also pay for everything in advance and get reimbursed. So it's not like they're giving you money. It's a very, very, in my opinion, back-ass, horrible system. And I'm really disappointed in Canada. I really, really am. And that's why I'm glad Nevin's doing this because I think there's such poor support for entrepreneurs in Canada. I think actually, I'm not going to get into that. Whoa, I almost did that. Yeah. It really hurts me because I think entrepreneurship and businesses can really help our world develop because if the whole world is working for the government, then how is creativity being fostered? How is anything being fostered? So I just wanted to get that up. Regardless, so I'm at a point now with this loan where I put this stellar detailed business plan together. I had worked on it for about a year, put it together for 6 months. No word of a lie. Every week they're like, yep, you're approved. Next week we'll get it signed. The next week, nope, we need to see this. It took 6 months after the initial approval to get the loan. Regardless, I pushed through and I got it. So I'm happy to say I got it. So what I'm doing now in life is I'm trying to create a company. So let me step back. So with this company, what I decided that we have a big vision. So what we want to do is we want to get a big property and we want to be able to do a lot of things on that property in our life. And we figured out, well, how do we get there? And so what I'm doing with this charcuterie business is I'm going to use that to leverage. I'm going to make that product. I'm going to prove that company. I'm going to grow it while I'm making this kick-ass workshop on my property funded by the loan, which is all legit because I'm using it for the business. And then once I prove that business, I'm going to then invest in the next step. So we've got multi-steps and we've got it's a very profound big picture. So the reason I'm doing that now and the reason I'm sharing that now with you is because I want to show you where for my entrepreneurial journey, it's chaotic, but it's not because I've sat there and I've planned years ago, like this is what I'm going to be. I'm just living life. I really am. That's all it is. I'm just going, like, letting the waves bring us. And I know our family, they're always like, you're always changing your mind. It's like, to me, life's about living. You got to be happy, and you're in control of that. And to me, it's like the last thing I want to be doing is sitting there working for someone else, being told what I have to do. I want to be free. I want to have fun, and I want to live life. And so for me, it's not about the things you do. It's about the reasons you do them. It's your why. And so, when we started this conversation, we talked about the reason why 45, 50-year-old plus are 2.5 times more likely. And so I just want to clear that because I think this is so important. And for those of you, well, it doesn't matter. You're stuck with me teaching this. So number one, again, if you want the greatest chances, these are what I'm trying to get. Know your why. 100% why is your passion. You have to have a passion. If there's not a why, and be honest with it. One of the things, there's great tests. There's the Berkman, there's the Colby, there's the, I can't remember them. So I take all these tests online now, and they tell you who you are. And the reason why they're so important is because you don't know who you are, really. You think you know who you are, but a lot of who you think you are is influenced by who other people want you to be, and they tell you that kind of stuff, or who you think you want to be. So the first thing is not only knowing your why, but your why, like really, why are you doing it? I wish I would have known when I was a young age that I see that with my daughter right now. We talk about that all the time. She just wants a family. And she's very musically talented. She wants all these other things, but it's so hard and so confusing because she's 22 years old and she has all these things coming to her. She's living in Ottawa. And it's like, you can see it and I can see it, but she doesn't want to hear that from me. But it's so hard to really be honest with yourself because it's like, she doesn't want to admit it. And we say things like, oh, don't get married till you're 30. Well, I mean, we joke around. At the end of the day, I tell her, get married now if you want. Like at the end of why not? If you really want to get married at the end there's a divorce and everything, and I get that. But at the end of the day, it's like people get divorced anyway. Anyway, so know your why. Number 2, execute. Steve, execute. Execute. No idea. What was Wayne Gretzky's famous quote? You miss all the shots you don't take. Exactly. He executed, and he missed most of them. But the thing is, he got more in than anybody else. You got to execute. Number 3, connections, networking. This is so important, and people hate it. People are like, oh, I hate telling it. Just learn to network. Charles Livingston, one of my close friends, he was working with me for Amazing. He started a coffee company. It's called Life Boost Coffee. He started it 6 years ago when he was still working for me. He was around $15,000 a month. He's right now doing over $2 million a month. He is the most horrible marketer in certain ways and everything, but where that guy's amazing is networking. And he knows how to make connections. He's got his real strength and he knows how to connect people. It's so powerful. It's such a good example for that because what got his business going was him knowing people, connecting people, and getting people to start doing things for him that made a difference. And then he just created partnerships with them. It's networking so huge. Confidence. And the only way you get confidence is through competence, and that means executing, trying, doing it. You have to make those first steps. Do it. I know it's scary, but you have to do it because the more you fail, the more you're going to get confident. And the reality is you're going to fail. When I had the honor of literally 30,000 people, my students have generated literally over $10 billion. It's the things that have come out of that have been absolutely crazy. But one of the coolest things out of that is seeing how that all happened and what went wrong and what didn't go wrong. And confidence is so incredible because the majority of people are so scared that they don't do anything. It's called overanalysis by paralysis. Paralysis by overanalysis, that's what it is. They're just too afraid to move. And the other aspect of it is people don't want to do the work. We had this one lady, Mary Kay Carr. She put a product on Amazon, literally within a week was doing about what? Well, she was making about 15 grand a month. And she thought, oh, this is so incredible. So she put another product, another product, another product. She ended up having 10 products on Amazon. She was still only making $15,000 a month. And so we sat down with her and talked to her. She goes, well, I'm just putting products up there. I'm not doing anything. And it was like, well, you can't do that. And she's like, well, I'm too afraid. So she was like, she just didn't want to do it. She was not confident enough to do the other things. And it was just incredible that you have proof that you know the model. And she's like, yeah, but she was overanalyzing why it happened. And so she just wanted to blindly put stuff out there and hopefully it would take. And that doesn't work. And last of all, resources. Assets, cash. Be smart with your money, especially when you're young. Like, you heard that. I heard that. Joe Ruscio, he was one of the guys that spoke here before. And so I grew up with Joe. I went to elementary and high school with him. And, to hear his story about how, I always thought he was the rich kid growing up, but he wasn't. And he ended up living in a duplex with his wife, paying that off, and then putting that money back in. And just being smart with those resources. It's such a good thing to do initially because it carries you through. And when you're doing a business, look at what assets you can create. And customers, like that data, all of those things are so valuable because you can transition with it. So I had a mailing list that I started teaching people how to build a website. So then you start figuring out, well, what is it those people wanted? Well, people are looking for, they want to earn extra revenue to be able to just do some things. They're not looking to be millionaires. They just wanted some freedom. So then it's like, well, what other things can I offer them now because of the reason they did this? So whatever your business model is, don't get stuck in, oh, they signed up for this. I'll use an example of you guys, construction. They sign up for construction. But well, what other things then? If they got a house, what are the other things you can sell them? That's where your money is, in those resources. And this is my very last thing. And then we can open up for questions. This was by far the most powerful thing I've ever learned in business. This saved me from overwhelm, and this helped me hire the best manager I ever hired that then allowed me to leave Amazing, because I couldn't leave Amazing until I knew it was in safe hands. And going through this, we figured out the things that I needed to do to hire the right person. So what this is, it's a value chart. So you look at yourself and you figure, how much money do I want to make? So let's say I want my company to be $1 million a year company. Then you need to look at it like, well then to be $1 million a year company, that means that I need to be making at least $300 and about $3,600 a day. So if I'm making $3,600 a day, I better not be doing $10 an hour tasks. So if you break this down and say, okay, I need to get to be making $3,600 a day. Look at all the tasks you're doing. So for example, how I did this is I had my journal and I started getting overwhelmed because I always had all these things on my list. So then I took a highlighter and I would write down at the end of every day all the things that I did. Anything, like every couple of hours you'd write. And you only do this for about a week or two. You don't need to do it more than that. And then you start highlighting things and you realize, like, I worked on image. I was on Facebook for 45 minutes. So you start looking at the things, first of all, that you got to just cut out. So like Facebook, all the social things. But then I was looking at things, what are the $10 an hour tasks that I'm doing? So now that's just a metaphor for, like, now it's $15 an hour, whatever minimum wage is, like your starting wage that you hire people. So that's things like, at the end of the day, bookkeeping. I'm not talking about accountants, I'm talking about basic stuff. Image creation, like basic things, not HR, customer support. And I'm talking from the framework where my mind is. Your business is going to be very different. But you look at your list and it's like, yeah, I could hire a minimum wage person, minimum wage person, minimum wage person, minimum wage person. Then you look at those tasks and you figure out, okay, so I have to keep doing them right now, but these are the first tasks that I need to hire for. Then you look at the $100 an hour Because at the end of the day, everything you should be doing needs to be in here. Every minute you spend doing work in these three areas is not going to get you any closer to this goal. As the company owner, your core focus needs to be on the top things that your business needs help with. For example, what are you doing with the money in the bank? Is it just sitting there? How are you getting cheaper loans? How are you, all of those things? How are you networking? Are you meeting new people? If you're just focused on doing customer support, if you're focused on answering phones, if you're focused on replying to emails that are just customer support emails that you could get someone to mimic you, then you're only going to have it, and it works every time. I guarantee you, if you're doing your business and you focus on these, you're going to have a 80 times 300, about a $40,000 a year business. If you transition yourself to only doing these and hiring out all of this, like as a business owner, I should not be doing my website. As a business owner, I should not be answering customer support emails. As a business owner, now initially you have to. Initially, like for when you start out, guaranteed, you have to do all this stuff. You're doing every single thing of it. But when you get to a point when all of a sudden you're wondering, why am I not getting any of this other stuff done? You have to do an audit. And it was so frustrating at first because it's like, I don't want to write things down. And it only took, I think I did it maybe 6 days, 7 days. And I had a full-time employee out of all of that. Because I didn't realize how many little things that I was doing that I was like, oh. And then, because when you hire people, the biggest mistake I made with hiring is just saying, well, I mean, if they're not doing anything, they'll be happy. They'll just wait till I give them something. They hated it. They need purpose. They want fulfillment. They want to be part of something. I think one of the biggest reasons why people leave companies right now has nothing to do with money, has a lot to do with money, but is it like something where they can grow? Can they be a part of it? Do they feel it? They get satisfaction? And if you can't provide that, well, they're not going to want to be there. And so it's not about how much you pay those people or anything. It's about making them a part of the company, making them a part of the story. And when you're a company owner, you have to be in charge of the vision. And you have to be in charge of enforcing that vision. And you have to be in charge of being the cheerleader. Because at the end of the day, when people are in that company and they're asking you, where are we going? And you're like, I'm not sure. I'm trying to figure it out. They're scared. They're horrified. They're like, am I going to have a job? You need to have that. You need to be clear on your vision. And you need to be a cheerleader for it. You need to be annoying. Like you really do, because then it'll catch on. And they'll start getting excited with you. I wanted to do one last thing. Because I saw a few inquisitive faces when I mentioned the $1 million. So one of the things I did early in my career is I knew I wanted to make $1 million a year. For some reason, that was the number. And then I looked at it, it's like, okay, well, how do you make $1 million? What does that look like? So then I divided it by 365. And I said, that's where I got the number 3,600. So then I figured, okay, I need to be generating on average $3,600 a day in my business to be able to get to $1 million. And then I just broke it down from there, is how do I get there? It's not that you're chasing the money, but the money has to come first. You can't have your dream, I chased a lifestyle for my business because I wanted time to be able to travel. I wanted time to be able to spend with my family. But I didn't have that at first. I was working a full-time job. I was traveling with that job. What I was doing at that time is I was just staying up late at night. I was spending all my weekends working. You have to do it. And it wasn't until now where I put in all that sweat equity that I'm enjoying it. So when I said initially, and do the things today that you're afraid of so that tomorrow you can do the things people only dream of. So it's amazing how many people I talk to and I just tell about where I am in life a lot smoother than I did tonight for some reason. But they're always like, wow, you're in that position now, and they're so envious of me, and it's such a great feeling to know that all of those sacrifices I did, that facing those fears paid off. And so remember that if you really want to achieve good things in your life, there's going to be fears. And so for me, that mantra today means take action, Do the things you're afraid of. Those are those scary things that are inhibiting you, whether it be people in your life. Like that was things that I faced early on, is like my dad literally telling me I was, not smart enough. I was a loser. Like he's not a good father. I just got a little bit personal there. I've never done that before. But, things like that. And it's not those are noise. It's in here. And you can do it. And it's just about executing and believing in yourself and really just having a mission. But for me, a lot of it too is about having fun. And I realized, and it's something that, when we sold our business, me and my wife talked, she said, do we want to move to an island? And the reality is, and I can't apologize enough to you, is that I'm a serial entrepreneur. I can't stop. I can't stop doing things. And I think, I just have to be real with myself, I love it. I love creating. I love what businesses can do. I love marketing. I love the science behind it. And if you can get passionate about it and do something you love, like you're playing. Like that's what's so neat about it, is I hated my job because it was a job. I play every day. I'm stressed, but like right now, what I'm doing, he just helped me out yesterday. They've been helping me out, is I'm building my workshop, a steel building. And I'm learning, and I'm like cutting. I bought myself a tractor. I rented a man lift. I'm learning all this stuff because I want to get the confidence and experience it. And it's what a blessed position I'm in my life. But it's because of those sacrifices I had early. I think that's it. So, questions? So, I would love to answer any and all questions if there's any. I'm saying I'm a lot again. I just want to apologize again that for some reason I'm extremely nervous. The smaller crowd, I don't know why.
It probably because your home community is different.
Maybe, there's a biblical verse that says the prophet's never welcome in their own hometown. And it's so true. Oftentimes when you grow up in a community and if you make mistakes when you're younger or whatever, it's hard for people to forgive you. And so that's one of the reasons my daughter moved away, is because sometimes it's good just to step away. After a few years, you come back and it's all new. But you guys are the most intimidating audience I've ever had. So congratulate yourself. Yeah, so. Any questions at all? Anything? Give me something.
Have you found it to be true, because a lot of people say this, that you've learned more from your failures than your successes?
Oh, yeah. We joke about this. For example, the real estate market. So we got into real estate, bought a whole bunch of apartments and stuff. And the way to make money with real estate is patience, really. Well, I don't know. Is that true? Patience? Yeah. And so because when you have a rental property, especially in Sault Ste. Marie, you can't get $3,000 a month rent. So you're really just paying enough to cover the bills, hopefully. And so after 7 years, when you've had your mortgage paid down, you refinance. Let's say you have a $500,000 property. After 7 years, you refinance it. You take out $150,000, put $50,000 to the building, and you pocket $100,000 tax free. So that's the idea behind it. But during that time of owning those properties, you've got to maintain them. You've got to keep people in them, all those kind of things. So we didn't like that. So we thought, and the real estate market wasn't doing anything. So we just got rid of everything. Yeah, a year later, it's like, oh my gosh, if we would have waited just a year, we would have made $1 million easily, extra cash. And so it's learnings, just little things like that about patience. Why did we do that? Start looking. In every business that I've ran, I would say only 20% of them have succeeded. I've done multiple. It's been the ones that have failed. I can't say that's the biggest lesson, because you learn a lot from your successes too, but failures are successes. So I don't like the word failure. And that's why when I was talking about entrepreneurs, so often we say it's a failure, but it's like, is it? You created a bit, you did something, you tried. I think that's a success. Yeah, at the end of the day, from the world look at it, it might have cost you some money, and internally you might have had a goal that you didn't achieve, but good on you. You did something. That's important. Anything else? Yes.
How do you decide, we have so many ideas, how do you decide which one to go with?
Am I ever glad you asked that? I wanted to teach this. So I'm going to give you a little idea. It might cost you $100. Okay, so Facebook has what's called Facebook lead ads. And so Facebook lead ads are simple ads that they'll allow you right on Facebook to enter your email into the ad. Because it's on Facebook and Facebook is showing the ad, they can pre-fill the email, but people trust it inherently. And so let's say can you just give me a general market it's in, like top level? Gardening. Okay, say gardening. So what you do is you create an ad, and so the step one is you want to test the broad niche. So you want to see, is this something that there's even interest in online, like people are going to respond. So in gardening, for example, what I would do is I would create an ad, it's called a Facebook lead ad form. Lead ad form. You do need to have a business account, I believe, which is simple. Anyone can get a business account on Facebook, yeah. And with that, what you're going to do is you're going to set up a campaign that's going to have, it's going to split test. You're going to come up with 5 images, 5 titles, 5 headlines, and you're going to find the audience I'm going to talk about. So we're going to use gardening, for example. So with gardening, we're going to create 5 ads. So we might have, and we're going to want to know, let's say that we have a flower shop and we want to see if we can sell flowers online. I'm going to try that one. So then, do you want to buy flowers online? Are you looking for flowers? Would you love to know how to get the best flowers? And you want to know how to get great flowers? That was lame, totally lame. But you got to come, you want to have different angles. So well, I'll tell you what I'm doing right now. I'm going to have to expose it, but that's okay. So one of the ones that we're testing is fishing. So the examples we gave are, do you want to learn how to catch fish? Do you want to learn how to, do you want the beginner's guide for catching fish? And we gave them a whole bunch of things like that. And then we had a picture, one with a guy, kind of receding hair, older guy holding a fish like that, one with a woman holding the fish, and one with a cat beside the fish. And then there was one with, I can't remember the other one. And so what we did, it's only $100, and we connected that ad to a free survey called SurveyMonkey, totally free. So what happened was, when they go on the ad, it simply says, they see the ad with the picture that says, do you want to learn how to catch more fish? So they see that ad, and right away they're like, yeah. It says enter email. So you enter his email, that's the second step, enter email, sorry. Then the third step is, when they've entered the email, it says, thank you very much. Please take this quick survey to help us get you better information. So on this survey, you come up with 3 questions that help you better define your market. So then it might be, do you consider, so the flowers one, let's say you want to, no, we're doing fishing. So then we'll say, like, do you consider, how many years experience do you have? Are you a new fisherman experience? Do you consider yourself a pro? So we wanted to really understand, what is it you're looking for information? So out of that, we found with the survey that not only were people, actually let me back up. So we spent the $100. What we're looking for is, in that ad, what did it cost to get the action? It's the cost per action. So you create the lead ad, you put the budget in, so you only want to spend about $20 a day over about 5 days. And what you're looking for is, how low can you get the bid so that when someone sees the ad and puts their email in, you get an email. So it's your cost per conversion. And you want to try to get something under about $10, because if it's costing you any more than that, there's not really a good defined market. But what happens with this ad is that in the Facebook group, in Facebook, you can create audiences, really general audience. So you can just go in there and there's YouTube videos on how to create Facebook lead ads. It's so easy. I'd look it up. And so what you do is you find the audience and you just say, okay, I want people that like fishing, have bought fishing stuff. And so you just type the word fish, and Google, Facebook will tell you the different interests that they recommend. So you put in 5 of those interests. So then what happens now, Facebook starts showing those ads. And they'll tell you at the end of it which one of those ad combinations worked the best. So for us, what worked the best was the guy with the receding hairline holding the fish. And for some reason, it just was. And I'm sorry for looking at the person with the receding hairline. I wasn't actually intending to do that, so I'm looking around. Just teasing you, buddy. And so the data we gathered out of that was realizing, like, wow, not only did we get the ad, people that clicked the ad for super cheap, over 50% of them filled out the survey. So right away, you know, so in the example you're saying, let's say you had 3 different business ideas that you want to go down. I would create 3 different ad sets based on those, and I would see which one, and you can come talk to me after and I'll give you more details on that, which one got you the greatest activity, which one got you the best ad. And local ads, so my daughter had a Gale's Golden Gala here a few years ago. I sold that out through Facebook ads here. They work so great. Like, Facebook ads to me are the best ad network out there. So what this does, and it works so powerful, is it tells you before anything else what the audience wants. Because so many people make mistakes. I had this challenge all the time with customers. I have something I want to sell on Amazon. How do I sell it? It's like, well, what we recommend is you find what's already selling good, start with a product that's proven, get your feet wet, learn how to sell, and then start adding new products. And he's like, no, I want to sell this product. What is it? And it's something they've made up. I said, do you know anyone that likes that product? Is anyone you know? But I know the world will be changed. And you have to get, when you have a business, are you trying to satisfy the customer or yourself? Because the customer is who matters. So, don't focus on providing a solution to people unless you know for a fact that that's what they want. Through my years of business, it was always like we would constantly be throwing different things at them because we can't just tell them like, this is what you need. No, we want the customer to tell us, and through this, what we've been able to know right away, which totally shocked us, is exactly what the audience wants. So right away, you're able to know exactly what this is. Not only do people like this market, so we've proven that, they want to know more about this. So we're able to start with already a solution to a problem. Because at the end of the day, you're a solution. You're a problem solver. That's what a business is. That's what an entrepreneur is. You solve problems. You figure out what's the biggest problem that someone has. How can I make money? And that's the other thing too. Like with a mailing list, with social media, with so many things, we feel guilty and we're like, we want to give away free information. Then you'll be poor. That's how it's going to happen. With emails, for example, like you have to send. When someone signs up for me, I don't want to be your best friend. I want to help you, but I need you to pay me or I can't keep sending you emails. So you have to do that. When you're running a business, it's about making money. So just remember that. Did that help? Yeah, okay.
Does doing that help you learn more about your target?
Yes. So the other cool thing about this, just one cool thing about Facebook, is what happens is Facebook is under a lot of scrutiny because of this kind of stuff. Because they give so much demographic information, people feel that it's a privacy issue. I love it because, for example, we just talked about this. I just got some ads that I had on Facebook. It's like, I didn't even know I wanted that, but because of the things that I've liked. Do you remember what it was? We were just talking about it.
I know.
But that's what it is. It's not a privacy issue. It's because Amazon is just trying to know your behaviors to give you a better experience, but people don't like that. But with Facebook lead ad forms, what happens is it shows to all those audiences, and then, like, for example, what we found out was not only you get to know that it was 55 plus that were mainly interested in our information, they lived in these states and so you know all that. So all of a sudden you can start making products like, because if you're talking to a 30-year-old or you're talking to a 50-year-old, totally different conversation. So by getting all this information, you end up not only finding exactly what the solution needed is, but also who your audience is, which is huge. Anything else? Yeah.
You talk about a coach, investing in yourself.
Yep.
How do you pick,
Trial and error. Coaches are great. For example, I had one coach that's, right away he told me, if you leave though, I won't take you back. That's not a good coach, you know, because a coach should be there only for as much as you need. When you don't need them anymore, they should be good with letting you go. Just start trying. I mean, it's just like a psychiatrist, really. It's just, you got to feel the vibe with them and make sure they have testimonies. There's too many people out there right now claiming to be coaches, and yeah. What else? Okay, did I do okay?